Right, guys, welcome back to the Adding Computer Fitness podcast. Today on the show, I have Mrs. Samantha Calhoun. She is one of the best powerlifters right now in the world in the 63 kilo class. Right? I'm getting that right, correct?
Technically 67 and a half.
67 and a half. Okay, so the reason why I say that is because there's been a lot of changes to the weight classes, and sometimes I forget but they're now back to the classical ones. But she is a 3 times national champion. You also been to IPF Worlds, coaches, and just Sam is somebody that personally I look up to because she seems to just show a lot of maturity in the sport, has a lot of experience. So it's a really big honor to have her on. So if I miss anything about you, now tell people about yourself.
No, that sums it up. Thank you. That sums it up.
Awesome. So I first wanted to kind of get into this sort of walking thing that Sam did about I think it was 6 months ago or something like that, where Sam was just on this step brigade where she's just getting all these steps per day, and it kind of took the whole powerlifting community by storm, and getting up to I think it was your highest day 45,000 steps in one
No,
day.
the highest, I think my highest was actually either it was 50 or 60K. It was something insane.
How much so first off, how did you do that? We're just always moving, and especially with client check-ins and stuff like that.
So that was the trick. So the trick to it all is that I bought a walking treadmill. So when I would do my work on my computer, I was just passively just walking. So I could get 15, 20,000 steps just like that. And it
Yeah.
wasn't hard. I mean, I was going at maybe 1.5, 2.0 miles per hour because I could walk and type, so it wasn't nothing strenuous. But yeah, a chunk of the time I was on the treadmill.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I guess I want to ask you what made you kind of want to start getting that many steps per day? Because obviously I think anybody who's familiar with fitness 10K steps is the goal, but what motivated you to sort of challenge yourself in that way?
So it was a fast evolution. So I was cutting down for nationals, right? So I hired a nutrition coach for that, and she had me maybe doing 150 minutes of cardio a week, and a large portion of that was on the treadmill. One day I decided to put on my Apple Watch. After you put on your Apple Watch, and you start checking stats.
Yep.
So then I checked my steps, and I think I had maybe 12K, 12, 14K. I was like, oh, okay. And then Brittany Saplicki, she posted her step count online, and she had 18K. And that's when it began. Because then I'm like, I thought my 14,000 was pretty good. 10K is the average, So I thought 14,000 I was doing something. So when I seen she did 18K, I was like, how did you do that? And she's like, oh, I have a walking treadmill. And as soon as she said that, I bought it because it was something I was always interested in anyway. I just never really pulled the trigger. So then, I got 18K, then I got 20K. And then I just so happened to get 22K. It just became a game. It really just became a massive game to me. And it just made the whole experience more enjoyable because I wasn't really focused on the actual cutting. I had something measurable to keep me going, and everyone just loved it. Everyone was walking.
Yeah, no, it was just really cool because it looked especially your clients were really got on it. And I think one of the things that people just don't understand is the most underrated form of exercise for everybody is just walking around. There's so many benefits. Stronger by Science posted some sort of infograph just a couple of weeks ago. It was the difference between 8K and 16K. It was a big difference in mortality. It was if you're walking 16K, it's 4 times reduction of risk of mortality, and being sedentary less than 5K steps a day is the same thing as smoking every day apparently. Yeah. So obviously there's some weight loss associated with that. I remember I actually DM'd you about that. I asked you how much that affected your powerlifting performance.
None.
Yeah, that's
so it was a great experience. I would say, so on average for the 30 days, I did 30,000 steps. I will say 30,000 steps is a lot, is a bit much. I wouldn't advise it because I was literally walking all the time. I was literally walking all the time. But it was such a great experience It was such a great experience because I was always active. I was always moving. I spent a lot of time outside. I spent a lot of time like walking around parks. It was just such a liberating experience that I mean, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, like so like or go back to like the whole like powerlifting training and like how it affected I think especially because like you went like a little more gradually. I think that was kind of the key to it not affecting you as much.
Yeah, so like I had my best training while walking 30,000 steps. Like
Wow.
I wasn't sore, I wasn't tired, like recovery was really good. It wasn't honestly it wasn't until after I dropped the step count is when training kind of like went downhill a little bit. Because I gave myself, I was like, I want to do this for 30 days, just because someone online said it would be cool if you could do that for 30 days. And I'm like, oh, 30 days sounds good. 30K in 30 days. So that's how I came up with the 30 days. Everything is a big game. It wasn't until after I stopped walking the 30K steps, is when training kind of like took a little dip. But overall, it didn't affect training, at all. Like it was really good because is no effort. It's very minimum effort. It just takes time, um, and just being intentional. But as far as like just the fatigue, it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, I think that's something that like I always recommend my clients to get around, 8K a day, since that seems to be like, the bare minimum where we start to see benefits. And a lot of times people will go get concerned, especially powerlifters, because like we're so concerned with our strength performance and recovery, how much is that going to affect them? And it's just like I've only seen benefits for people that are a little bit more active as long as they're fueling their training. So like how much like do you basically give your clients a step count goal as well?
I don't. I don't. Because that's something it was kind of something that we just all did together online. It's not something that I actively prescribe to them. Um, I don't have clients who are actively trying to lose weight. If they are actively trying to lose weight or cut weight for me, I refer them out, to someone who could dedicate their entire focus to that goal.
Mhm.
And then their nutrition coach will give them their prescribed cardio.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to go into that because I don't think we're like really many people like it's like like want to find out like the reason being behind it, but really really cool that you were able to challenge yourself in that way. It seems like you're really really competitive. So I kind of want to ask you about that. Like what sort of like have you always been that way since you were a kid? Like what do you think has kind of contributed to that? Because I'm something I've noticed with all the best elite athletes, like they're super competitive. Like Russ, Taylor, Taylor Atwood, Brittany Saplicki, like name any of anybody at the top. They're super competitive. Were you always that way? What do you think made you that way?
I don't know if I would describe myself competitive in the sense of like winning and losing. Um, I'm competitive in the sense that if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. Like I want to be the best in whatever I decide to do, and that could be anything. Powerlifting just so happens what I chose powerlifting by luck, really. But I think if I would have any sport, I would have had the same passion and dedication to it. I don't know if you followed me maybe a couple of months ago when I decided to teach myself how to swim, and I
I
was in the
did.
pool every day. But it was just the same thing. Like whatever I do, I want to be good at it. It's not necessarily I want to win. That's just kind of a byproduct of the passion. But that's always been my goal. I've been playing sports since I was 6 years old, so it's just kind of a part of who I am.
Yeah, I think that's something that I talked to Matt Gary about this too. And he said it's sort of a similar thing with most of the elite athletes. It's like they're so process oriented, and they're really it's just about like being their best self. And I think that for myself, just like speaking anecdotally, when I started out, it was a lot more about I want to beat other people. I wanted to do that, but over time, I kind of learned there's not much I can really do to control that. All I can control is like how good I am, and I think a lot of times, like, my goal was to like, I always want to like win, but just I want to just be like the best I possibly can. I want to see how strong the I can get. And I think a lot of this does come down to sort of like having that process orientation, so like being so focused on the outcome. You think that's a big key in like why you've been successful as an athlete for so long?
100%. Because powerlifting is such a weird sport. Like you literally can't control the win. Like, and like I kind of did like a mini meet recap after the pro. Um, so like going into the pro, no one really was signed up that would have like contested a win for me. So I kind of put, I'll say 80% effort into my meet prep, meaning I didn't diet down, I didn't cut because I didn't have to. And then Celine signed up like 8 weeks out, right? At that point, I knew like, oh, crap. For me to actually win, I need to cut weight, truly. And I chose not to because I also have the Orno coming up. But in many cases, you can't control who shows up. Like who's going to show up is going to show up. And you just have to hope that your best self is better than them on their day. But it's not like you can play defense, right? And I think only a select few of individuals kind of have the luxury to say, oh, I could walk into this meet and win. Most people, even if they put 99.9% of effort into their meet prep, they only can control what they can do on that day. And that may be good enough for a win or it may not, but they can only do what they can do.
Yeah, I think that's like a really like I like that perspective. So I think that like obviously you did like a great job with the Virginia Pro, and you're always like very consistent. And I know that I was listening to Solana podcast, and she was saying that before I believe shoot Celine Crum signed up, you're like, oh, I can just walk into this meet and win. And then when she signed up, you're like, oh crap, I have to actually try now.
Yeah, and that's real. Like I literally had that conversation, and I even messaged her. I was like, so like, should I cut? Like I really didn't want. I wasn't in the mental headspace to do that. I mean, it's only so much time throughout the year that you could put your body through something like that. You know what I mean? You have to pick and choose those times, and it's just unfortunate that the Pro Series is all about dots, and dots favors little people. So I asked her like, should I cut? And I forgot what she said, but we both kind of decided like, no, let's just make it a good meet. So that was the goal.
I saw going into that, like cutting weight for powerlifting is, I think that's always something that, a lot of people like myself included, we see a lot of the top athletes do that. And, it's kind of like, the whole principle is the more muscular that you are, the more advantage you have, if you can cut weight a little bit, to that 2 or 3%, and you can handle it and, reconstitute appropriately, it's generally going to be a competitive advantage. But in regards to like cutting weight, how often do you recommend that to people when you think that should be a consideration, if ever, for people? Because I think that you said something about, like obviously like just have a good meet. And there's like I've cut weight personally, and I've noticed that like it's like the consistency, like the reliability of the outcome is just gets like way lower. Like I do 24-hour weigh-ins.
Yeah. You say you do 24-hour weigh-ins?
Yeah, I could be
Oh yeah, you got it way
USDA,
better.
so yeah, I know it's way easier.
Yeah. Yeah. It really just depends on your why. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't advise any of my clients to just cut just for the sake of cutting. If they're trying to cut to qualify for nationals, to me that's a strong reason. If they're trying to cut to increase their dots to get into the Arnold, that's a good reason. If it's going to increase their placing at nationals, that's a good reason. But for just a local meet, for myself, it's not worth it, because typically people cut weight to be more competitive in the lower weight class because they think, hey, I'm gonna keep my current strength, but I'm gonna be 5 pounds lighter and I'm gonna get into the lower weight class. And sometimes the lower weight class is more competitive than the weight class it was running from. You know what I mean? Like I said, you can't determine who shows up. So someone from the 75 kilo weight class may cut down to 67.5 because they think that could make them more competitive. And then I show up to the meet and that all goes out the window. So I don't advise it for most people.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
at the top level, you kind of have to at some point.
for sure. So like I thought of that, say you have somebody who is coming up and you're like, they have like some pretty good potential to potentially be, top 20 in the weight class or be competitive at nationals. Would you say like practicing cutting is a smart idea, like seeing like how you respond to it, how to like reconstitute, or is that something that you would just like, I guess like as just do it like as needed and then react accordingly?
Ideally, I would say make it your livable weight. like
Okay.
slowly get down to that weight. So the cut would be in striking distance, maybe 3 or 4 pounds, depending on, how big you are. So it wouldn't really be a cut per se. Maybe you could like water cut in. Like for me, for the longest time, I was able to be a 63 because my livable weight was 142. So to get to 138, I mean, I just had to clean up my diet for a few weeks and I was there. So I wouldn't even constitute that as a cut. But now as I'm getting older and I'm getting a little bit heavier, I'm sitting at say 147. So getting down to 138, that takes actual dieting and cardio. When for many years that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I talked to Kedrick Kwan about this, and he was actually the guy who just managed to tear outwards cuts. He actually had like a very
Mm-hmm.
similar, mindset of like just be at that weight, like control your diet in the off season because like you want to be strong at that weight, not strong at a higher weight. Because like if you're cutting weight, it's like anybody who's gone through it, like dehydration, it's a big deal for your performance. I think it's like just 2%. Dehydration has like a 5%
Mm-hmm.
impact on your performance. And I think that most people too, if they're being honest with themselves, they care about just being stronger and hitting higher numbers. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're really having that mindset of like just yourself and just doing your best and walking in wherever you're at, you're gonna have a much better meet day in all likelihood. Have less stress going into that because that is a stress for cutting weight, and it's going to be a lot more fun and just focusing on that total and building that and getting stronger. And instead of like saying cutting weight to get stronger, actually getting stronger to get stronger.
Right. Because
Yeah.
everyone wants to be stronger and to get PRs and to get a PR total. Like that's everyone's goal. I don't think anyone outside of the top 1%, their goal is to have a bigger dots. Because no one's walking around saying, "What's your dots?"
No, absolutely. It
You
was like, nobody, yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point because, I've gotten caught in that trap, like, oh, like I want to be like a dot score because like, wanting to qualify for like meets like the American Pro or something like that. And just like, it get stronger and it'll come and just focus on eating to fuel that performance. So I wanted to sort of ask you then, what is your sort of like nutrition like? How has that evolved as you've gotten to be more elite? Would you say that you've gotten to be a little bit more on top of it? Like what does nutrition look like for Sam Calhoun?
Oh, that's hard to say. So for me, when I'm cutting, it's kind of a beautiful thing because then I'm more intentional and deliberate. And it really equates to me eating more because I'm eating more quality food, which equates to more volume of food. You know what I mean? So it's not a process that I'm suffering. It's actually a process that I'm thriving. And then you actually say, well, why don't you do that all the time? It's just that it takes like when I do something, I want to be all in. So it just takes a certain level of focus when I am doing it, because for myself personally, when I'm tracking, I want to be able to track all the time. And if I can't track all the time, it's discouraging. So when I'm in it, and I can only do that for a certain period of time. Like now I'm prepping for the Arnold, so I know, okay, we have 11 weeks to be focused, and we're gonna track to T as best as we can. And then after Arnold, that's my time. Like, okay, we don't have to do this, and I do a pretty good job of like managing my weight. So it's not like a big yo-yo, but when I am tracking, when I am focused, like I said, it's a position of power versus detriment.
Yeah, I really like that approach because it's sort of like also with the training, like, I think the people, especially like, like I've fallen into this trap, like being like, oh, have to be all in all the time for best results. And I think that one of the things probably has also contributed to your longevity is basically pulsing your effort. It's not like you care less. It's like you're not making the same amount of progress, but sort of like the mental energy, the mental focus around the entire training process because like I know that for myself, especially like that last spot going into meet with like singles, I'm like super on edge, and it's hard to, especially I find that is when it's hardest for me to auto regulate because I'm like, oh, I have to be strong right now.
Oh,
Even
100%.
it's like
Yes.
yes, because like just like a really good example of this is like in my prep when I pulled 700 for the first time, I was really sick. I always get sick like 2 weeks out. It's like, oh, looks like it's meet prep, and I auto regulated. I was like I wanted to pull 672. I was so sick, my brain wasn't working. I only loaded 300 kilos. And so I pulled that and I was like, moved very, very fast. And I peaked very, very well. Whereas on this time, I walked into the gym, you know that feeling like you pick up a bar, you're like, oh crap, I don't have it today.
Hmm.
Um, I loaded 650, and that should have been my scene goal, like 8.5, but I loaded up 678, and that I peaked early. You know, I had
Hmm.
that fatigue. Um, and so like if I was a little more even keel about it, instead of trying to force things and learning how to auto regulate, I think that's like going to be, I think that's super important overall. Just like not like I, for example, I didn't track for like a month after my meet now because I naturally under I lost a little bit of weight, but I'm not really worried about that because it's always like I can track, use that tool when I need to, and become more intentional when I have to. Especially like in off season, I really encourage more variation, more lifestyle stuff because then it's like you feel so much better overall. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about
Exactly.
that.
Because so then when you get back into prep, like true prep, you want to be there. You know, like when you get back tracking, you want to track. It's not like a chore. It's like, okay, now is the time. But if you're all in all the time, you just never have that, like you said, that mental break. Like you really need a mental break. And like for me, I think one of the downfalls is that I could never go into a meet with a mental break. Even when I try to go to in a meet with a mental break, there's still like outside pressures, like putting more external stress than what I want it to be. Like I would love for the Virginia Pro just to be for myself, a local meet. Um, but it's not, if that makes sense. Because you need time to just be and exist, and you need time to push hard. Um, you can't push hard 100% of the time.
So just for context, like in terms of like what does push hard mean for you, from a training standpoint, like how you just approach everything with your powerlifting in contrast to your off season.
So for example, what you just said, like when you get 1 month out, right? And you know you want to be strong and you need to be strong. It's easy to push those 8s to 8.5 and 9, even when you know that this next single is going to be an overshoot. But it's that fine line between like knowing it's going to be an overshoot and really just pushing. Because at some point between 600 and 680, it all feels the same. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like, okay, where like, am I like here today? Am I like mentally like pushing myself, or am I not? Because it all feels the same. So you have to make that decision. Okay, like how far are we going to push? You know, so if you're 4 months out, you may say, okay, it's not even worth it today. I'm gonna make sure this is a true 8. But the closer you get to the meet, the less true that 8 becomes, because the stakes are on the line, right? Because you know I need to be strong on this day. I need to hit X in the gym to justify X on meet day. You know, but when there is no pressure of the meet, you're more true to yourself, if that makes sense.
absolutely. And that's something that like especially as I've gotten to be a little bit older and a little more experienced, it's just like, and I think barbell medicine, you're coached by Austin Rocky still, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yeah.
I first off, I love barbell medicine, like just everything that they do. Like I have actually I was happy to my master's in athletic training before COVID hit. And I was like, hell no, I'm not, you know, spending 35K to get, you know, a subpar education experience. But they did talk a lot about how you can't really force that strength, how it's completely on your own timeline. Like, and I've learned that more and more I've gotten to be stronger. It's just like, and the best progress I've made, like for example, I've every single sort of plateau I've had with a lift had to come with trying to like force that strength, is what I've kind of realized. Like on bench press, I was solid out for like a solid year, like literally a year, being between 325 and 336 on bench. And it wasn't until I actually took a step back, really auto regulated, took my ego out of everything, just really was like, okay, what was RPE really? I started making just consistent progress, like going from 330 in May to, you know, doing 3664 in November. And then with squat, like I was plateaued for forever. And I took my ego out of it and was like, nope, I'm just going to auto regulate. Um, and like with deadlift, it's been like, that's my favorite lift. I'm the best at it. And like, I have a really big ego with that. And that's why I've been kind of stalled out for a little bit. And so like taking that step back and really be honest about like, how strong am I really? Because the ironic thing is, if you're trying to force that strength, you're constantly overshooting. It's like
Hmm.
that's actually what's going to make you not make progress.
But it's hard to have that conversation with yourself. Like for myself, my deadlift is so temperamental. It's so temperamental. Like my heaviest pull leading into the Virginia Pro was 465, right? My opener was 463. So that's scary. I don't
Yes.
think people realize how scary that is to not know what's on the other side of that. Fortunately, I've been doing this for long enough that I know my deadlift shows up in some capacity on meet day, but you never want this the next time to be different than history. You know what I mean? So, but like in the gym, I have to have those conversations with myself. Like, this is the 8. This is what's there today, and we can't force it, right? But for myself, if I take that and say, okay, well, on meet day, 500 is not going to be there. Let's open up at 440. That's my whole competition right there. So it's taken a long time for me to say it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Let's take that 8 and move on. Let's not force that 8. And just trust that on meet day we'll make the appropriate decisions, accordingly. But that's taking some maturity to not just force a weight that's not there.
And like kind of like what you said, it comes with that experience. Just being like honest with yourself, like this is my 8. And like you have like for normally it's like like you have so much competition experience, like your deadlift shows up and it holds like 10% fatigue in training, and that's kind of like a wild thing to like think of. It's something that's the ironic thing about training too. Like if you're trying to be peaked all the time in training, you're not going to get stronger. And like for most people, it's like don't plan on that hero peak. But like if you like have like meet after meet after meet, like David Wilson and yourself, where your deadlift is consistently that much stronger in competition, like you can do that. It's always going to be a mental battle, but knowing yourself and your training and like respecting that process is such a big part of learning how to be objective with yourself and how to make that best progress, and being totally okay that like performance does fluctuate, and you only really need to be strong like on meet day.
On the
Another thing
day.
with my absolutely, and like one thing I always tell, like training splits too. I really try to get my athletes to practice. Like I tell them, you only need to be strong once a week on that primary day, and on those other days, I don't care where your max is at. It's probably going to be a little bit lower. Really hit that RPE, that RPE 6, and don't get in your head about it, and only focus on that primary day. All the secondary, tertiary days, whatever you're doing, it's to elevate that baseline for that primary day.
Exactly. Yep.
So I wanted to get in a little bit into like how you got into coaching, and sort of like I think that there's not as many female powerlifting coaches in general. But I am seeing there's a lot more, like number one, like there's much more women in strength training in general, which like makes me so happy to see. Like whenever I go to my own commercial gym, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like the same amount of women as men, which I think is amazing. I want to ask, like, how did you get into coaching, and like what is your opinion on like the more females getting into coaching and training? Like, what do you think that women can offer the coaching experience that men just can't?
I don't think there's like a let me tackle the first part of the question first. I got into coaching organically. So I started in personal training, and then I was in I got my master's in exercise science. And through that, I discovered powerlifting because one of my classmates, he always did any research topic we had to do, he did it on powerlifting. And that's what really opened my eyes to strength training. And then he would funnel me different articles, different ebooks, a lot of educational content he would funnel my way. So that's what opened my eyes to strength training as a sport. Prior to that, I did track and field in college. We lifted, but nothing serious, truly. It wasn't until grad school that opened my eyes to powerlifting. And as I got into powerlifting and through personal training, I'll have clients who also wanted to get into powerlifting. And so organically through that, I grew my powerlifting team and business just along the way. So it was never something I said like I want to be a powerlifting coach. It was just like I had clients who come, they want to get stronger, they're getting stronger, now they want to compete. It was just a natural progression of things. So through that, I grew a powerlifting business.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got into things too. It was like I just started lifting. I started like I really got obsessive about exercise science, and I kind of like tried to learn as much as I possibly could with online resources. And I got some people that started like reach out to me as I was just posting like my training logs and whatnot on Instagram. Like that was how my Instagram kind of grew. It was just like I just here's me doing this, and like I was getting pretty strong. And I like that. And then over time, people just asked me like, "Do you coach?" And I was like, I guess. And I was like learning
I
about
guess,
this,
right.
and yeah, and like I started off with like for free, and I learned how to do it, and like that passion kind of evolved. Because I think that like one of the things that most coaches will say, like I love coaching just as much as I love training myself and seeing like my athletes like succeed, and also working with through those hard times, because powerlifting is not just sports in general, just they are not going to go your way all the time. It builds a lot of
Mhm.
that resiliency. It's taught me a lot about myself and being like a leader too.
100%.
Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like I wouldn't be the athlete I am today if I wasn't a coach. 100% would not be who I am today if I wasn't coach. Because just having to hear your own words constantly every day, and I do a lot of in-person training, coaching, so that have to hear my own advice. There's no way you can't live it. You know what I mean? You have to live with what you're preaching. So I definitely wouldn't be who I am today without my clients.
I think that's such a really good point, because I feel like the same way. It's like one of the things I tell my clients, like, do your job. Like that, and what that means is like do what you're supposed to do on that day, do the right thing, do the thing your future self, your future self to be proud of. It's going to show you that progress. And it's like for myself, it's like I always share my training, always, every day, like the good days and the bad days on my story. Um, and when I post, and I'm transparent about like what I think about it. And like that's one of the things I like about Bryce Lewis. He's very transparent about that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very like refreshing, because it's so like I see myself like even like I have a bad day. Like for example, one day I just didn't have on deadlift. I did 540 for sevens. The week before, I could only do 485 at the right RPE. The next week, and I was like, I don't want to share this. I don't want to share this. But like, it's like I want to show my athletes and people follow me, like, look, it's not all sunshine, shine, and rainbows, and it do be like that sometimes,
It do be like
and
that,
it do be
yes.
like that. It's frustrating, but the more often that you get it, so it's like, oh, like I'm just going to move on. There's more training days, and you're going to get better. And like with just everything in life, like it's taught me a lot about like how we said, like hear my own advice. Like, am I actually giving good advice, and is this actually stuff that I listen to myself, or I'm just being, am I just being a hypocrite? That's never good.
Right. Because everyone, and because everyone I talk to, they feel like they're in their journey alone. They're the only one having bad days. They're the only one having bad meets. The only one having a lack of progress. They're the only one with whatever issue they have. But I'm like, we all have the same issues, just to different scales. Like I look into my database and look at my previous meet history. It's been like 2 years since I PR'd my squat. You wouldn't know that unless I tell you, unless you're actively following. We all have these bumps in the road. It's just we maybe just to different magnitudes. But yeah, we're all going through the same struggles, and we all just trying to get better.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I noticed when you follow, like you really have like a really awesome community that is like really invested in you, like with your questions of the day. You do a really great job of really getting the people involved and feel a lot like they're together. And I think that like with also like Team Sam Strong, like do you do like something with that, like community and like team building stuff, like having like group chats at all?
Well, the reason why the community is so strong is because a lot of them live together. Like I
Gotcha.
said, I do a lot of in-person
Hmm.
coaching, so that kind of helps build that community. So like on Sundays, I'll have like 10 or 15 people in the gym at one time. I may be training literally one of them, but they all congregate at the same time. So it just builds the whole experience. We do meets, we may have 10 or 15 people doing the same meet, you know. And even for the people who live out of state, it still just builds upon that community. And it just create an environment that people want to be a part of. And it really, I don't even think it has anything to me. I'm just kind of like the vessel, but it's the people that makes the experience.
Absolutely. And the main reason why I actually share like, my clients' progress on Instagram and whatnot, like it's not necessarily for marketing. It's mostly just to like I know that my athletes, like when I'm posting like my other athletes doing well or myself doing XYZ, like they're just like, okay, awesome, I'm part of this community. Everybody's making progress. I want to be, it's a little bit like more that investment of, is like, we're super social creatures and we want to feel understood, like other people will kind of understand us. And in some ways, like, people will hire coaches for that too, to not feel like they are alone and somebody else like understands what they're doing. It's like, this can be kind of isolating. Like, most people are like, they just don't know like what it's like to do this.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. Like it has to become more than just you. Like this is it's a lonely road if all you think about is yourself. Like it has to be more than just you, you know. I have clients, they may show up to the gym just because I'm there. You know what I mean? And once they get there, it's like, wow, I'm glad I showed up. Right. But if they didn't have that community to go to, they probably wouldn't show up at all. So it's just great just to have just other people just supporting you along the way and driving you forward for the times that you really just don't want to.
Yeah, and I think that's another really big thing about having like an actual like powerlifting gym to go to, or a good training environment, is like the reason why I love my gym, is because like all my friends are there. I see people like getting stronger, and like with my athletes, I have like some of them are stronger than me on
Oh
certain
yeah.
lifts and whatnot, and like that lights a fire under me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta really like keep going. Like I'm like, I love it. It's like, just keep pushing me and whatnot. And one of the things I think that like we're all strong. If everybody's getting stronger and everybody's like holding themselves to a higher standard, like we're like, everybody gets stronger, everybody gets better, and like having that whole mindset of like like growth mindset and like abundance mindset of like, hey, like there's plenty of gains to go around. Let's just all try to be our best selves. Like that's really all it's about. Like you're not going to make better progress if somebody isn't making isn't having their goals met. That's kind of like why I just like, I think it's like so good when the people are like yourself or whatnot give like each other experiences, because it just helps people feel a little more understood.
Oh yeah. But going back to like having clients stronger than you, like when I have my female clients, like it depends on where we are in the training cycle. Some of my clients will be lifting more weight than me. And that is so motivating because I'm like, okay, all right, like let me get myself together, so I get back there. Like that is so like motivating. I don't even think like they realize how motivating that is. But it definitely keeps me going as well. So um I don't. So going back to the question about what can a female coach offer a client that a male coach can't? I don't think anything. Like truly, I've only had male coaches, and as a female myself, I don't think there's any more value that I offer my clients that my male coach doesn't offer me. Like all the male coaches I have had been supportive, emotionally, throughout the way. I think it just comes down to just finding a good coach in general, someone who has very good communication skills, someone who's willing to problem solve, um, and just grow and adapt along the way. That could be a male coach or a female coach. I really don't think it matters by gender. I think it's just all about finding a coach that you personally connect with, because that's going to be the most important factor. Someone that you want to communicate with, someone that you want, to be a part of their coaching system per se. Someone that you're able to be open and honest with, you're not afraid to talk to. So I think that's more important than finding a male or female coach. Because I'm sure there are some shitty female coaches, like there are shitty male coaches, vice versa. But it's just all about finding that right person for you.
Yeah, I love that. Coaching is first and foremost a relationship. I work with Eric Bodhorn and have for like almost 2 years at this point. And the reason why, like, if I didn't like him, if we didn't get along well, he didn't like listen to me, I wouldn't be his client, no matter how good of his programming is. And that's like really what keeps people around. I guess like the whole reason why I even posed the question is because like sometimes I think people feel a little bit more comfortable with like a male or a female coaching them, but kind of like what you said, it just matters about like, is that person the right fit for you? And obviously, can they get you progress, but also like, do you just like working with that person?
Yeah, I posed a question on one of my question of the days, why do like most males go to male coaches? And I truly believe it's because male coaches get freebies. And I mean that by it's more likely for a really strong male who's already strong to go to a male coach than said male coach gets notoriety because they have a strong male, and then all males flock to that coach, and then they go up, and then they just build up their roster. Females don't get that freebie. Wherever client we get, we got to build them up from the ground level. So I think that's what we see as for disparity in who we see. But I think the experience could be great on both ends. You just don't, like I said, the females, we don't get the opportunity to showcase that.
I think that's an interesting take, because now that I think about it, that is pretty much true. Like if you think about like Joey Flex, or like just I think he's like the perfect example of that. Like because he has so many athletes, it's like a lot of, and like really strong men, and people are like who are also men are like, I'm going to go to that person who's getting other dudes like me. I kind of want to be strong, and sort of like that aspirational marketing. But like I think that like I don't think that's like something that people should like look for in general. Is like I didn't like I you should be looking at the person that's going to make like the best progress for you. And like what you said, like I have some really talented athletes. I have some, like especially like in Sweden, who are like they could be at nationals. One of my athletes almost got the Swedish deadlift record in the sub juniors, but like most of my clients, I had to build them up, like what you said. And I think that lots of times, like I have a video on like what you should look for in a coach, like look for like how they can get people like you stronger. I think that's like the most important thing too.
For sure. Yep.
So I guess just to ask last question, if you could give yourself like one piece of advice, like your past self in regards to powerlifting or in like just life in general, like what would you tell what would you tell past Sam?
I would tell past Sam to stay hungry. So when I started out, I was too hungry and I kind of got it in my own way. And then how I achieve success is about, like you say, being even keel and being objective. But at some point, you got to turn that switch back on, right? Because there's a difference between just complacency and contentment. And those lines could be very blurred, right? I think we all should be content because it is a long road, but we shouldn't get complacent. Like for myself, at some point I got complacent. And I know for myself is when like the IPF and the USAPL split, like my road to success just got like axed. But you have to find, a new why and something that's going to keep you hungry and drive you forward. Because like to do the things we do, like you have to be hungry. Like this is like once you get to a certain level, you're not gonna do impossible things just by like going through the motions. Like you have to attack, and you have to know you're the best, and you have to want to be the best, to achieve those new levels of success. So I would just tell myself to stay hungry.
I think that's a great way to end off of the podcast. So I thank you so much for just donating your time. Always it was a pleasure, talking to like really amazing athletes and people. So if people want to find you, where should they look for you?
So the best place to find me is on Instagram, sam.s.calhoun. Just shoot me a DM. I'll respond right away. You can also check out my website, samstrong500.com, just for more information. But if you want to contact me through Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sam. I'll include that information in the show notes. And thank you guys for listening to the podcast. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.